This is the hands-on computer exhibit at the Exploratorium, a science museum here in San Francisco. And one of the most interesting things about this exhibit is the kids who come here, because there are as many girls as there are boys. The stereotype is that computers are mainly for boys and men. But today we're going to take a look at women in computing on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
The Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by grants from AFIPS, the American Federation of Information Processing Societies, a nonprofit federation of 11 national societies for computer professionals. AFIPS, Leadership and Service in Computer and Information Technology. Additional funding is provided by McGraw-Hill, publishers of Byte. Byte's detailed technical articles on new hardware, software, and languages cover the latest in microcomputer technology worldwide. Byte, the international standard.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee, and this is Gary Kildall. Gary, we have up on the computer here an adventure game called Cave Girl Claire that features a young girl as the main figure in the adventure game. And that reminds us right away that, in fact, most adventure games, most computer games are aimed at men. Now, a lot of people thought computers and high-tech would be an equalizer among the sexes, but yet most computer engineers, programmers, scientists are, in fact, men. What is your theory as to why there is this gender gap in computers?
Well, our industry is really based in general engineering, which is a male-dominated field. But our industry also thrives on talent and innovation and not on artificial biases and barriers. What's the reality of the situation? I don't know what it is exactly. I do know in my personal experience, my son is a computer nut and my daughter loves horses. Now, I love both those directions, but I can't tell you what I did to influence that. Maybe our experts can.
I think so. We're going to meet the woman who created this particular piece of software for women. We'll meet several of the top women in the computing field to find out why there are so few women in computers. Now, their numbers may be few, but there are some precocious young women out there in computers, and we're going to begin with a profile of a young female computer whiz.
Computers in the classroom are no longer scarce, often introduced to both boys and girls as early as the first grade. But while the sexes are about evenly divided in this elementary school class, the ratio changes in later years. A recent study indicates that first-grade girls are just as likely to use computers as boys. But by the sixth grade, boys outnumber girls by 2 to 1. By the time they leave junior high school, boys make up 80% of the group learning to program computers. Educators cite different reasons for the discrepancy, from intimidation and parental pressure to educational software's male-oriented games. But while it may be a simple job to count heads in a classroom, it is harder to keep track of the computer's influence outside of school. Corey Grimm is 16 years old. She's also a graphic artist working at her mother's software company. Since the age of 10, she's used a joystick, a mouse, and an electronic palette to give form to her ideas. To Corey, the computer is not intimidating or alien, but the most natural resource to produce her artwork. She talks about progressing from low to high-resolution screens like a promotion to the next grade. Unlike many artists who only reluctantly traded the tactile sense of a paintbrush for a light pen, Corey began her graphic arts career using the computer as her primary tool. She also has 3 computers at home, programs in BASIC, and does her homework on a Macintosh. With the help of teacher workshops, female enrollment in computer classes has expanded recently, and hoping to find a new market, some software vendors continue to develop programs specifically designed for women. But Corey Grimm learned naturally to assimilate computers into her life without worrying about either one.
Joining us now is a mother and daughter team of computer scientists. First of all, Thelma Estrin, a professor of computer science at UCLA, and next to her, her daughter, Judy Estrin, the executive vice president at a company she helped found, Bridge Communications, a company involved in local area network technology. Gary?
Thelma, you're considered successful by any measure in computer science and engineering. And your daughter is certainly very successful with following your footsteps with advanced degrees in electrical engineering, computer science. A new company that she's formed, a very successful company. How did you manage to get into a field such as engineering at the time that you did?
Well, you may remember during the Second World War about Rosie the Riveter, the women who went into war industries. Well, I had the opportunity to work in an engineering lab and replacing the men who were going to fight. And after that, I decided to go back to school and major in engineering, and it was at a time when I just went right through and got a PhD in electrical engineering. And
you're considered pretty rare at that point?
Yeah, very rare. I was married at that time to my husband, who also has a PhD in computer engineering, and most of the people thought I was in school either to do his homework or he had me in school to keep me out of mischief. But nevertheless, we both went on to careers, and he had the opportunity to go and work at the Institute for Advanced Study with John von Neumann, and I worked there for the summer and then went into another field, biomedical engineering, but then subsequently came back to computer engineering.
Have you seen attitudes shift at all during that time?
Yes, tremendously. In the sense that then I was very rare. Somebody would say, what do you do? And I'd say an electrical engineer, and they'd always say, well, you don't look like an electrical engineer. Well, I don't think you find a woman who says she's a computer scientist today, anybody saying, well, you don't look like a computer scientist. So from that point of view, I think.
Judy, one thing that people talk about is the role model. What effect do you think your mother had in terms of your career?
I believe very strongly in the impact of role models, and is one of the reasons why more and more women are going into computers and engineering, because those role models exist. And I think one of the main differences in the things that have helped me be successful has had to do with how I approach my entry into the industry and my moving along in that industry. I never questioned whether or not I should move into a man's profession. I watched my mother do it, and it was a question of why shouldn't I, and let's see anybody stop me, as opposed to going out there cautiously. I might add also, though, is when I say that I'm an Executive VP of Research and Development, I still get people who tell me I don't look like an Executive VP of Research and Development.
So maybe not that much has changed.
So it has changed, but if I said I was an electrical engineer, they wouldn't question it. But it is still at the higher levels of management, I think, that the attitudes are
Judy, we had your mother's perspective on the things that have changed in one generation's worth. I was wondering what your perspective is on what it's like now compared to what you saw your mother going through when she got into this field.
I think you really have to separate out the individual contributor and the first level managers from upper level management. And at the engineer level, it has changed dramatically. And I entered the workforce in an industry with young men, and so those younger men were very accepting of me. And I'm very happy to say I have had very few obstacles going through my career. It's the reason I've been able to do what I have so quickly. And I think that there have been dramatic changes. At the higher levels, someone earlier was mentioning that the women at the top have tended to be at top of companies they have founded. So I do believe that there are still obstacles there, and mainly attitudes of people in terms of upper level management.
Is that an attitude about business in general, or is it the computer industry and engineering?
I think it's business in general. I still think that the computer industry is a lot more advanced in their attitudes than other industries, and it's because it is a young industry driven by younger people who have grown up in a world in which it's more acceptable. But it has not disappeared. And there still are, again, when I introduce myself, people look at me, and it takes a couple minutes for them to believe that it's really true. So.
Thelma, you teach computer science at UCLA, and I'd be interested in what you see in the differences in your male and female students, if any.
Well, I really teach at the graduate level, and talking about UCLA, there's one overwhelming difference that you see that transcends male-female, which is the large portion of Asian Americans that are in the school. And interestingly enough, among that new community, you see almost as many women in engineering and in computer science as you do, this is both graduate and undergraduate, as you do, well, as many women as you see men. Now,
more so than among the American students?
Yes, more so than among the American students. And among the American graduate students, you still see a smaller percentage. You see about 10 to 15% women, while at undergraduate level, it's about 20% women.
Okay, Thelma and Judy, thank you. Now, in just a minute, we're going to meet a woman who creates software for women, and we'll meet a woman who heads up a women's computer project at UC Berkeley, so stay with us. Joining us now is Elizabeth Stott, co-founder of Rhiannon Software, creators of software for girls. And next to Elizabeth is Kay Gilliland, director of the Equals in Computer Technology program at the Lawrence Hall of Science at UC Berkeley.
Elizabeth, Judy was telling us when she grew up in her home, she felt like it was okay to work with computers. Now, do you feel like the software that's out there for the home right now makes a young girl feel like it's not okay to work with computers?
Most of it does. The artwork, the content, the way that the games are played, they all say, hey, this is a boy thing. The advertising, the whole industry has said this is pretty much a male machine. I agreed with what Judy said. It's like cars were in the 1920s. You know, a woman wasn't caught dead driving a car then. So we have this tremendous psychological barrier to overcome with girls. And when you talk about role models, that's a big way that we've addressed it is by very appealing, realistic, spunky, fun, energetic kind of girl characters that are having these neat adventures. That will appeal to girls. They'll say, hey, I'd like to do that. It's not like being a robot or something like that.
As long as that's acceptable among the peer group, then it's okay. What sort of things have you done with your software that really is, say, oriented toward, well, not necessarily, say, little boy oriented?
Well, they're oriented toward girls in several ways. The characters is one way. The style of the graphics is another way. Our graphics draw at a rate that the eye can follow, which is very appealing. We tend to find that people lean into the computer when they first see our graphics rather than leaning away from the computer like they typically do with other software.
Can you show us an example of that?
Sure, yeah. We had such a good response from our adventure stories for 7 to 12-year-olds that we designed something for 4 to 8-year-olds which does not involve reading. So with this program, Kristen and Sarah are two new little friends that are for a pre-reader group, and they have a different sort of adventures where you use 3 keys on the computer but you don't have to type or you don't have to read. Now this is the menu that Sarah would have. It shows a bunch of different activities that she could choose. She can put pictures in top, middle, bottom order. She can choose, in this one you have weather conditions and they can choose clothes to wear certain days. You can tell nature stories. You can figure out what goes on a calendar. And you can put little stories in first, middle, last order. Now this all goes along with the elementary school curriculum and the things that are being taught there. Now here's some of the appeal of the graphics. You know, kids love that and they identify with riding bikes at this age, of course. So Sarah and her friends are always zooming around on bikes.
So the idea basically is that as a child really gets into this quote game, the computer is just kind of an artifact that's there, and then, oh, by the way, it's okay to work with computers because this happens to be a way that you can play the game. So.
They identify with what's going on. They make it real. They take it into their own real life. We've built these games around children. We haven't said, let's match children to the computers. We're saying, let's make a computer game that's going to match the interests of the children. So the animations are cute and the clothes, well, for example, if a kid wants to choose a bathing suit to wear in the snow, they can, and they do, and they giggle a lot. Grown-ups might think that the right answer is the mittens and the boots, but kids like to try different things. So we encourage them to experiment and have a lot of fun and just find out what the computer can do.
Do you ever have boys playing with this software?
You know, the extraordinary thing is that you have this girl picture on the cover, you say it's for girls, and boys will say, aha, a new computer game, let me try it, because it is such a male-identified machine. Whereas girls will say, oh, I didn't know they had anything for girls, and then they'll try it. And then what happens is that after they've used our software, they'll go on to other kinds of software. And that's really the point, to crash the barrier so they can go on to other kinds of things.
Okay, what is your feeling about this, introducing, let's say, computers into this?
Oh, I think it's very important that we use whatever entry point that we have in order to make sure that girls have this experience. And many of the things that Rhiannon has done are used in the home, and this helps tremendously. However, it's also true that in the schools, something must be done. Many parents really don't have the same feelings of awareness of this, so that one of the interesting things that happened at the Lawrence Hall of Science recently, we were watching a little group of youngsters, preschoolers, using computers. They were all boys, 12 of them. And a mother was standing there watching the kids, and I said, do you have a son in that class? Oh, yes, he's that one over there. And I said, does he like it? Oh, yes, he likes it. Of course, he might rather be out playing, but yes, he likes it. I said, do you have a daughter? Oh, yes, she's older. And is she interested in computers too? Oh, we never thought about it for her.